this guy? Remember this? Remember Muhammad al-Jalani? This is the guy who had a bounty on his head, a bounty for $10 million, just like over a year ago. Rewards for justice. Washington, D.C., they were calling for his, capture. Remember that guy? Okay. Well, that guy eventually was given a suit, a haircut. They gave him a real job. He is now president of Syria. And that guy just came to the White House to meet with Donald Trump. You can see in a video here of his arrival. Check this out. We live in a cartoon. Yeah, we really do live in a cartoon. So a former Al-Qaeda member just came to the United States, waltzed into the White House to meet with the president of the United States. The US government can shape whoever they want, especially when it comes to global politics. You can see him here with Donald Trump, Dave DeCamp. I think this, how many? 9,000 likes. Dave DeCamp sent this around on X the other day. Al-Qaeda comes to the White House. And that's exactly what this is. And I guess they just think that people are stupid or Americans are just not paying attention. I don't know. But this guy, and I got to point something out. Donald Trump just released the sanctions on Syria. And now here comes in Jalani with a visit to the White House. This is the same guy that they told you years ago was chopping off heads. And now they don't deem him a terrorist anymore because they gave him a suit and gave him a desk job. You are now president of Syria after they overthrew Assad. Israel has gone into Syria and they're already starting to take over. All part of the plan. This guy can walk into the White House. The guy that had a $10 million bounty on his head and was deemed a terrorist. But you got the government hunting down American citizens, arresting people. When I get to the Kash Patel story, you'll see what I'm talking about. Suing people, censoring people right here in the United States. Calling people Hamas sympathizers. And they said it's Hamas that you really need to be afraid of. But this guy can walk right into the White House. I tell myself we live in a cartoon because of stupid things that happen like this. Here it is again. Shout out to Combat. Make Al-Qaeda great again, he says. Like, this is absolutely insane. And when I saw this the other day on X, I said, this shit is wild. And at a number of times, like, how many war criminals come through the White House, right? Netanyahu comes through the White House. This guy comes through the White House after he chopped off heads and sits up there and stands right next to the president of the United States. So the reason why I point this out, ladies and gentlemen, is because I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this anytime they continue to come after the pro-Palestinian protesters and call them domestic terrorists. I mean, nothing they say holds any weight. Their actions are what you should pay attention to. But this guy is now their hero because he's doing what they want him to do. They got a puppet, a Western puppet installed in Syria, which is what they wanted, which is also what Israel wanted. So they're good. They're fine. Forget the bounty. Again, that bounty was still there just a year ago. But they got you out there telling you, be afraid of Xi Jinping. They're telling you to be afraid of Maduro, but not this guy. When we see these things, we definitely have to call it out. Even MSNBC called it out. Even corporate media is calling out the buffoonery.
President Trump is set to welcome Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara at the White House. This meeting comes at a high-stakes time for the war-torn country as it looks to rebuild after ousting Bashar al-Assad last year after his 20-plus years in power. And joining us now is MSNBC senior White House reporter Yvonne Hilliard and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for House Affairs under President Obama, Joel Rubin. Vaughn, this is very significant. This marks the first time a Syrian president will visit the White House since 1946. Why did the president want to have this meeting? Why now?
And this comes after the president here just this last month, he dropped sanctions against Syria. This is an olive branch that is being extended to the Syrian president, welcoming him here, not just to U.S. soil, but to the White House for a bilateral meeting any minute now here. I think it's important context to note that this was somebody who had been detained under U.S. custody and Iraqi custody during the Iraq War. He was somebody that was accused of having been affiliated directly with al-Qaeda. He was detained for 6 years before his release in 2011. He then went from Iraq back to Syria, where he set up the al-Nusra Front with other jihadists. At one point in time, the United States had a $10 million reward for him, designating him as a terrorist against the United States. Back 1 year ago, ultimately, a group of jihadist military Islamist rebels, they took Aleppo, and within 2 weeks ended up taking Damascus. And ultimately, al-Shara was led to become the president of Syria. Fast forward 11 months later, he is here coming to the United States. He has suggested that he had left those terrorist organizations like al-Qaeda and al-Nusra Front because he had disagreed with them. But this is...
Pause. So Jelani is saying, well, I left those organizations because I disagreed with them. Okay. Do you think if someone left Hamas, you think our government would say, all right, kudos, let's make you president. Let's come on into the United States. No, they wouldn't. Jelani is working on behalf of the U.S. government and Israel. They found a puppet. They found someone that is willing to do their beck and call. And it's just so corrupt. You know, so this is one of those situations where I don't want you to look at the U.S. government and say, oh, my God, they're spineless. No, they're not spineless. They're corrupt. Jelani is corrupt. Trump is corrupt. This is all corruption. And I still can't help but go back to last December when people were cheering on the overthrow of Assad. And I warned you back then that regime change is not good. Oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Things are going to be better for people in Syria now. Okay. Didn't take long for people to see, Israel's entering into Syria. Didn't take long for videos to start circulating around on social media showing them beating Syrian people after the overthrow of Assad. Regardless of what you think about what is going on in another country, it is not we don't have the right to take over their country. We don't have the right to overthrow leaders and install other leaders. And I warned people about this before. When we have these regime change wars, the people in those countries are worse off than they were before. We should have learned this lesson with Saddam Hussein, but here we are. And this man is now being treated like a hero. It's like the people who do the most dirt get the most applause by our government.
Is a moment in time where President Trump has suggested that he sees him as having been a strong leader and a potential opening to have not only relations with this key Middle East country, but one that has suggested that they have no intent to have war against their Israeli neighbor. And this is potentially an opportunity after effectively 15 years of civil war in Syria to find a regional partner and to begin to help reconstruct Syria that has been devastated from Damascus and beyond, and seen much of the population displaced, not only in other parts of Syria, but also outside of its borders.
Joel, I think context is key here. And as Vaughn pointed out, al-Shara was once connected to Al-Qaeda. Can he be trusted? What do you make of this meeting?
No. It just, I don't even, I don't even know how to say this. I don't even know, like, what do you mean? Can he be trusted? They don't even trust us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me make this very clear. They trust this guy who chopped off heads, but they don't even trust us. They surveil us. They censor us. They silence us. They deplatform us. They don't even trust us. But they want you to trust this guy.
Yeah, Anna, it's a real monumental day to have him here in Washington. It's a whirlwind, quite frankly, and I think what we're seeing now are the fruits of a longstanding bipartisan policy towards Syria that was opposed to Assad. I don't think anyone predicted that we would get al-Shara in his place, but al-Shara has been making the moves to say that he is no longer affiliated with terrorist organizations. That can be verified. We have our allies in the region who are backing him up as well. And it's a critical moment to...
Let's pause. And even if he were, you think he's going to say yes? Yes, I'm still affiliated with Al-Qaeda here. Of course not. That's not the point. That's not the point. The U.S. government grabbed this guy and said, guess what? We are going to make you you're going to have a new day. We're going to give you a makeover. And we're going to turn your life around. And as long as you do these things for us. All those years, the U.S. government has sanctions on Syria, and Trump removes them because they got the puppet in that they want. Now, everybody needs to pay attention to this because I want us to think about what's happening in Venezuela. They want Maduro out. They've wanted Maduro out for a long time. They want to install their own Western puppet that is also going to go along with the Zionist agenda. Maria Corina was talking about this herself. The woman who just got the Nobel Peace Prize, she was talking about this. We have to go along and have this relationship with Israel. So don't be surprised. Just pay attention to what is happening in Venezuela. Because if they do overthrow Maduro, don't be surprised as to who they install there. It is absolutely just insane. More people should be outraged about this. Jesus Christ. Chosen as president in January for Syria's transitional government. In January, Assad was overthrown in December. It was right before Donald Trump came into office. But this is something Biden and Trump agreed on. Goes on to say here, formerly wanted as a terrorist, jailed by the U.S. Army after he pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda and was part of the Iraqi insurgency against U.S. forces. How is this not treason?
Really peel Syria away as a keystone state in the Middle East, peel them away from Iran and from Russia and into the American column. We need stability in Syria. We haven't had it for about 15 years. It's destabilized Europe through refugee flows in addition to the Middle East. So this is what we got. And hopefully he'll continue to say what he's been saying and demonstrate that he means it, that he's off of terrorism.
Joel,
I can't even believe the way that they're saying this. Well, we hope that he's off of guys, we watched them arrest students right here in the United States. We watched them arrest, detain, and try to deport and deported some students because they were pro-Palestinian. But this guy can just walk right into the country and walk into the White House. There's nothing here. Like there's no morals, nothing at all. But they yelled at you if you defended those students that were being dragged, detained, kicked, all this kind of stuff. But this guy can walk right in. So it was never about, oh, we have to protect Americans. It was never about that. Listen to him here on Fox News.
Do you, Mr. President, have regrets that al-Qaeda carried out those attacks that killed 3,000 Americans?
I was only 19 years old, so I was a very young person, and it didn't have any decision-making power at that time. And I don't have anything to do with it. And Al-Qaeda was not present right then in my area. So you're speaking to the wrong person about this subject. We mourn for every civilian that got killed, and we know that people suffer from the war, especially civilians who pay the price, a hefty price for the war.
Right on Fox News. Even Fox News, they're all in on it. Even Fox News. Mr. President, they said, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So it just, like you can't make this up. You can't make this up. If you didn't think they lost all credibility before, I sincerely hope that you think that they lost it now. Now watch this connection. Check this out. It was a privilege to welcome President al-Shara to the IMF. Ding, 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 ding. We discussed the economic transformation Syrians need and deserve, which his government is making possible. Here we go. This is what it's all about. The IMF. I reiterated the IMF readiness is to help, including through our existing technical support for key institutions. So here he is meeting with the IMF.
Mr. President.
Like this is wild. Mr. President, welcome to the IMF. He went from chopping heads to the IMF. And this is what it's all about, folks. I'm going to show you something here about the IMF as well, right? Because they want the money, like they want to control the currency. So he's just sitting there at the table with all these leaders. Like, I can't believe more people aren't upset about this. What does the International Monetary Fund actually do, the IMF? Watch this. The IMF works to achieve sustainable growth and prosperity for all its 191 member countries. It does so by supporting economic policies that promote financial stability and monetary cooperation. Highlight cooperation. That's key. Which are essential to increase productivity, job creation, and economic well-being. The IMF is governed by and accountable to its member countries. Let's get to the mission. The IMF has three critical missions: furthering international monetary cooperation, encouraging the expansion of trade and economic growth, and discouraging policies that would harm prosperity. Let me revise this. Three critical missions: furthering international monetary cooperation, trade, right? So they're not going to be fond of something like BRICS wanting to move away from the dollar. Going on here, encouraging the expansion of trade and economic growth. And look at the words they use: encouraging trade. What that also really means is you do what the hell we tell you to. And if you don't, we'll make sure that we work along with the United States and Israel and whoever else to get your leader out and to put in the leader that we want, that is going to go along with the trade policies that we have in place. This is important. And discouraging policies that would harm prosperity. How do they go about discouraging it? Overthrowing leaders, starting wars. A lot of this at the end of the day all comes down to money. So of course he's at the IMF. Everyone connect the dots. They just removed the sanctions. He visits the White House. He's at the IMF. These countries, and I wonder, what's coming for the BRICS countries, but a lot of these countries that do want to move away from the dollar, BRICS has brought this up multiple times. China has brought this up as well. The IMF, Israel, the United States government see them as a problem, as a threat, because that does impact trade. whether they're trading with them or not. It also can start something else. Other countries may start to look back and say, you know what? I don't think maybe we want to move differently too. It's just, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. All about the IMF. We went from this 2016 to 2025. So, but they're hunting Americans down. They're hunting you down. Jason said it here. He's the same ISIS killer who orchestrated the suicide bombings, mass casualty attacks, and killed U.S. troops, but put him in a suit, call him interim president. Suddenly, he's magically absolved of all of it. That's where we're at now, folks. So no, it's not that our government is doing that because they're spineless. They're doing it because they're corrupt. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.